Hey, so we'll get started. Hey, thanks a lot. First of all, Coach Jan, for bringing the boys to come do this. I feel sorry for some of you because we did this last year, and we did a hashtag for 100 session last year where we talked about some of the things that we'll be talking about today. We were talking about Rick Ross. We were talking about this black narrative in America that deals with drugs, and then we were also talking about this A game. How do we process behavior? You know, we see different things, we see people from afar, and sometimes we have a tendency to judge, condemn, and then we want to kind of define what somebody else is or who somebody may be based upon what we see, what we know, what we think we know. But once we start to ask certain questions, we start to develop an understanding that what we see has been inspired by something. And any of us could have been in the position that somebody might be in that may elicit judgment or ridicule or so on and so forth. So you have to sit through it again. You have to sit through it again. I changed some things up, modified some things, so hopefully, even though some of the concepts are similar, hopefully there's some things that are a little bit different so that you can engage and learn something and that I don't bore you too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow this sheet right here. I wrote a lot of this stuff on the board just in case somehow I screwed up the email, but obviously it got to Coach Rick, and I'm sure Coach Jan didn't print these out, Eddie did. So I thank you both for getting this done for me. But we can follow this, or we can follow the board as well. But the first thing I want to do is I want to pray so that we make sure that we can optimize this opportunity. So let's pray really quick. Father God, thank you for this opportunity to be with the men's basketball program. I ask you that you would give us clarity within our spirits, within our hearts, within our minds, so that we're able to take in this information. And we're able to hopefully internalize it in such a way that we can apply it and put us in position to show up better as people, as Christians, and as young men that will hopefully be fathers, husbands, leaders, and professionals one day. So I just ask you, Father, that you would bless this space, and also, if you could, reduce some of the inhibition and the vulnerability, reduce some of the inhibition in these young men and give them the courage to talk and to share so that we can truly optimize this opportunity. These blessings and others, amen. Amen. All right, now listen. I don't want to assume that everyone believes in God, right? I don't want to assume that. So some of you might not have a spiritual practice, right? Or it might not be the spiritual practice of this institution. So what I want to do is I want to give us 30 seconds for you to lock into whoever you lock into in the event you don't follow the same God, right? Because some of you might have somebody different that you're praying to. I don't know, you might be praying to that microphone up there. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? So I also want to give everybody an opportunity to lock into whoever they lock into, because I don't want to assume anything about how you guys, lock into the world of spirituality, right? So what I'm gonna do is just go on my clock, give us 30 seconds for you to lock in, and then we'll get straight to the action, all right? Here we go. So this is a moment of silence, and you just kind of meditate and lock in. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into this. I'm long-winded, have a tendency to talk, for a long time. So I definitely want to get right into the action so that we get all these concepts out and give you an opportunity to share voice your opinion, reflect, so that hopefully, again, we can make the most of this experience, because what you're going to learn is, although we're going to talk about the Black experience in America, and we're going to talk about multiculturalism, I'm also going to give you, hopefully, some tools that will help you to develop emotional intelligence, right? And you'll need emotional intelligence when you're down by 5, you don't have the basketball on defense, and you got, 45, 50 seconds on the clock. In those huddles out there on the floor, if you have emotional intelligence, it could optimize your ability to get stops, make plays, make great reads. But if you don't have emotional intelligence, it could do the opposite. You might get flustered, you're yelling, you're screaming, you're not communicating, people are saying things that need to be said, you can't hear it because you're deep into your emotions. So what we're doing, it works well for life and in terms of the Black narrative and all of this, but it also will help you out as it relates to just play from a basketball standpoint. So I got honored with the opportunity to do some work for Student Life through Dean Rachi. He said, listen, I need you to create a program that helps us to, that has some student life components to it. We need to make sure that whatever we do in this space will complement the classroom experience, right? So student life. I'm not trying to just teach you like you would normally be taught in a regular classroom, although it feels like that. Hopefully I can make this experience a little bit different. But I want to make sure that what I'm giving you is tools and methods that you can use outside of the classroom. He also said, I need to make sure that what you do has some Christian ethics. Whatever you do has to have some Christian ethics. So we have to make sure that God is a part of this experience. And so with that being said, I came up with this thing called #400. And what we want to do is we want to commemorate the Black experience from 1619 to 2019, 400 years that Blacks have been in America. And so one of the things that I want to do is I want to use the Black experience as a case study for what happens if you do something to this group of people. What are the implications, right? So if we take, we think about the Black experience, and Black folks were brought to this country, these things happened to us, and these are kind of all the results. So it's not anybody or any group or any race could have been Black folks. Right? So again, we want to use the Black narrative as a case study to understand if you do these things to these people, what are the implications? We want to explore that because it is at that point that we realize that the ways in which we see the highest versions or editions of the Black experience, those are always easy to look at. Those are always easy to celebrate, so on and so forth. But sometimes when we see these low versions or these low stories or these not so glamorous narratives of the Black experience, sometimes people have a tendency to look at those and those experiences and point the finger, judge, condemn, talk badly about those people, so on and so forth. And what I want to help us to understand that from the highest blues to the lowest symphony of the Black experience, any of us could have been in that situation. Any of us could have been in that situation. You dig what I'm saying? And because any of us could have been in that situation, it's necessary that we use our imaginations to exercise empathy and try to figure out, I wonder what it would have been like to be in that type of situation. I wonder what those people had to go through, so on and so forth, because that could have been me. That could have been my group. That could have been my race. That could have been people that I resonate with. Those could have been my ancestors, so on and so forth. So we'll jump right into it. One of the key ideas that we want to really focus in on is what inspires legacy, culture, and behavior. What inspires legacy, culture, and behavior? That's the key thought that I want to keep in your mind, all right? And it's a question that I want you to ask, it's a question I want you to play around with when we talk about Rick Ross, and then as we start getting into you as yourself, I want you to ask that question, what inspires my legacy, culture, and behavior? As we start talking about the team, other members of the team, I want you to ask the question, what inspires legacy, culture, and behavior? It's an important question to ask to help us refrain from judging and kind of defining people, without their permission. So, what inspires legacy, culture, and behavior? We'll jump to Rick Ross. How many people know Rick Ross? All right, everybody knows Rick Ross, the rapper, correct? Rick Ross, okay? Rick Ross is a rapper, but he's also an actual human being. He was a drug lord that was getting busy, and the early 80s and the early 90s, Rick Ross, right? So what we're gonna do is, I'll tell the story about Rick Ross. I'm gonna start in the middle, right? Then I'm gonna go back to his origin story, and then I'm gonna fast forward from the middle to the end of the story. So I'm gonna kinda, it's a weird way I'm gonna attack this story, but Rick Ross was at the peak of his powers in the 80s, doing stupid numbers, especially for that time, right? To put it in perspective, Magic Johnson came into the league when? When, anybody know when Magic Johnson came into the league? Remember, take a crack at it? 70, no, not that early. I think it's like 79. 79, right? So Magic Johnson comes into the league in 79. He signs a lifetime contract, $20 million for 20 years. That sounds like chump change now, right? Bums get that in the NBA. Role players get that in the NBA easy. But at that time, $20 million for 20 years, a lifetime contract, it's big money. It's long paper, right? Rick Ross said, he making that, he can make just $1 million a year? I do that in a day. Sometimes I triple that. Just to give you some perspective of how much money. So you can do the numbers. 1 million times 365, and some of those days he getting 2 million, maybe 3 million. That's some heavy, that's a lot of bread. So Rick Ross was the man. During the 80s, during the crack era, when crack wasn't looked at how it's looked at now. Crack then was kind of under the radar to some degree, right? It was a recreation thing. It was a recreation drug. And so we go back to Rick Ross's origin story. What inspires Rick Ross's behavior to even get in the drug game, right? So how many of you ever heard of the Black Panther Party? Black Panther Party? All right. Some of you will probably think that the Black Panther Party was this ruthless, militant group of black people. They were not. It was actually a protection program, right? There was a law in the 60s that said is you could walk down, this was in Sacramento, California, you could walk down the street with a gun as long as you didn't have a felony, right? Now, we can keep it 100 with you. That rule was probably for white folks, probably not for black folks, right? There was a time when there was a decriminalization era where they were trying to find ways to get slaves and get black people to decriminalize them, right, and put them in jail. So rightfully so, they wanted to have weapons on the hip, weapons on site to kind of keep black folks in check. Well, some of these black folks started getting hip and said, wait a minute, I know this rule, I know this policy. As long as I don't have a felony, I can hold a firearm too. So in the era where black people were getting beat down by cops, were getting shot by cops, so on and so forth, a lot of the same things that are happening now were happening then. The Black Panther Party said, we're going to create a protection program. And one of the things that we do, we're going to protect people in our community. So if we know that this brother has not done anything wrong, his brother may not know his rights, but we know our rights, we know the law. So what we're going to do is we're going to protect them. Also with this protection program or this Black Panther Party program, what we're going to do is we're going to feed our community. We're going to have breakfast programs for the kids to make sure that these kids get a good breakfast before they go to school so they can perform better academically. We also want to make sure that we have simple needs to make sure that our community is healthy. You know, you go to the hospital for certain little things, you might have to pay a couple dollars. Well, everybody ain't got that. Well, they said, well, listen, we can raise the funds, and we can make sure that if you have to get your shots or flu shots or something like that, we'll take care of you. Now, the Black Panther had a 10 point or 10 request manifesto of things that they needed in order to feel like they were given a fair chance in America, right? And so that was their origin. That's what they were about, protecting their community, providing for their community. They weren't about just gun violence, being militant, and going after the establishment, right? But what happened was the Black Panther slowly but surely became the most feared group in America. The most feared group in America, right? And so because of that, you had government officials, you had the FBI plotting against the Black Panther Party. Slowly but surely, you start seeing some of these leaders die off. You start seeing them go to jail. Families were broken up. people in the Black Panther Party were so committed to the Black Panther Party that they were willing to go hide out and go somewhere and kind of vanish, leave their families at home so they can kind of continue the efforts of the Black Panther Party. But part of it was they knew that if they stayed at home, their family would get harassed, their children would get harassed, their wives would get harassed. So they were trying to find ways to kind of keep up the efforts of the Black Panther Party and protect people. But at the same time, they were forced kind of out of their homes out of a sense of kind of extreme commitment, right? But also fear that their families might be targeted if they were to stay connected to them. So what you see is the Black Panther Party that was protecting the Black community was starting to be compromised, right? Starting to be compromised. And so at the same time, you started seeing a lot of our Black leaders get taken out, right? Malcolm X is already dead. Martin Luther King is already dead. The Black Panther leaders are starting to be assassinated as well. And so now you have this community that was once powered by community activism, right? That is now no longer protected by that community activism because all of the leaders are being taken out. Everybody with me? Everybody with me? All right. So now we also see that there's this substance that's taking place in the mid-70s to the 80s that's also starting to take people out. When you do your research, you notice that a lot of the Black Panther parties, a lot of the key leaders or the key figures, they were all suffering or they all suffered from drug abuse, right? Because then they didn't know that crack cocaine, they didn't know heroin, they didn't know those things were as toxic as we know them to be now, right? So right now, weed is okay, right? In some spaces. Right now, weed is looked at as, hey man, this thing could possibly help you. You got anxiety, hey, just go get high, you be all right, right? You gotta have it, it's gotta be medical and all of that other stuff. But at some point, crack was looked at the same way. It wasn't as celebrated, but it was looked at something just like, hey, you just get you high, just kind of take the edge off, just help you relax a little bit. It's not that bad. But we didn't know the devastating effect that it could have over the course of time. So now you have the Black community is being destroyed. There is no leadership. Also at the same time, they're taking a lot of the trades out of the high schools. Back in the day, if you wanted to be a electrician, if you wanted to be a brick mason, if you wanted to be a auto mechanic, there were several trades that you could take in high school. So imagine you go to high school, right, by your sophomore year, you discover, you know what, I can go into plumbing or something like that. I don't know all the different trades. But you could have graduated high school and got a job, maybe probably making 30, 40 grand. Back then, that's a lot of money, right? You can start your career, you're an entrepreneur, make your own hours, so on and so forth. You might work for a company and make some money. Then you can have your own side hustle. So you can make a lot of money because you've got this skill. Well, all those jobs are being taken out of the high school, right? So now that brings us back to Ricky Ross. What inspires his necessity or need to jump into the drug game? Well, communities dilapidated, communities suffering, drugs has made an appearance. All the leaders are now gone, so who do we look to for guidance? The Black Panther Party is totally destroyed at this point, right? We're talking about the 80s. The Black Panther Party, everybody's starting to fold because they don't want the harassment from the FBI. You can't go to high school and get a trade like you used to, right? So you can't get a job, can't start working on my job skills so that I can hit the workforce and get going. College isn't what it is today. Some of you all probably thought, once I graduate high school, I'm going to college. It's not a question. That's the next step. Whether you play ball or you didn't play ball, many of you thought, you know what, my next step is I got to go to college, I got to get a degree. You know what I'm saying? Your brain didn't shut off after high school. Well, in this situation, your brain could shut off after high school because college just wasn't the end-all be-all in terms of making it in the world or even being able to provide for your family. But here Rick Ross is like, well, what are my options? My neighborhood's destroyed, what am I supposed to do? Most criminals are smart individuals. What they do is they find a loophole in society and they optimize it. So they say, well, listen, man, if I can take a little bit of this, chop it up, expand it, sell it, make more money, go back to the supplier, get more work, sell it, get more work. If I'm disciplined with my money and if I'm disciplined with my money, I can turn this into a thing. Now, There's another thing that's kind of ironic, something that's kind of coincidental. America used to be allies with a Nicaraguan group, we'll just say a group, an international group. We used to be allies with an international group, right? We were supporting our allies in terms of basically funding their war, right? So here are our friends. Ty Black's an international, he's an international movement of some sort. He needs some help fighting this war, protecting himself and fighting for whatever he's fighting for. As an American, I say, you know what, bro? I'm gonna fund your war. You don't have to worry about anything. I'll make sure you got all the guns and all the ammo and all the protection you can think of. But then Ty Black does something stupid. He does something so stupid that I have to distance myself from him, and I say, listen, I can no longer support you in terms of finance, right? But what America said is, how about this? I won't finance your war, but this is what I will do. If you have a resource in your country, I'll allow you to sell it in America tax-free. All you gotta do is you can sell whatever you want, and whatever money you make from this resource, you can then fund your own war. How many of you know what that resource was? Yeah. D. Ronchi said. Right? So it was the drugs. So now, Rick Ross figures out this drug is here in America. I can capitalize on it. It's brand new, right? It's still relatively new. My community's suffering, but I can use this to now help myself out because I don't have any options really. My mother killed my brother because my brother poked my mother's eye out in a fight. I'm trying to help you understand where this brother's coming from. My mother killed my brother in front of me because my brother attacked my mother so much that he injured her eye. So what must his brother have been going through living in that time, right? That he lost his mind and went after his mother. How many of you guys got siblings? All right. What would happen if one of your siblings attacked your mother? Whoever that is going down, right? So imagine you grow up in this, and so now you're trying to figure out, how am I supposed to help my mother? How am I supposed to make things right? And sometimes when you want to make things right, you'll do whatever's necessary to make things right. Everybody with me? So we find drugs. So now, he finds a drug game, and inevitably he goes to jail twice, and he finds a loophole in the law. He's free, but at this time he understands the error in his ways, and he makes right on everything. He works hard to make right on everything that he had done prior to going in. So now this brings us to forgiveness, right? This brings us to forgiveness. And what I have here is I have 4 different versions of forgiveness. 4 different versions of forgiveness, right? And I'll tell you how it connects to Rick Ross, because I'm going to ask you some questions in a little bit. So my first question, the first kind of form of forgiveness is we got to ask for forgiveness, right? Everybody asked for forgiveness before? All right, maybe just me? All right, cool, all right. The second thing is we have to ask forgiveness. Well, how did I write that? Ask for forgiveness from others. So we have to ask for forgiveness from others. There's time when we have to ask forgiveness from God, and then sometimes we have to forgive ourselves. I want you to think about the Rick Ross narrative that I just painted for you, right? Hopefully the way I told the story was kind of jumped around a little bit, but I want you to tell me, how do you see forgiveness playing out in Rick Ross's story? Who needs to be forgiven? Who needs to ask for forgiveness? Who needs to forgive themselves? Who needs to ask God for forgiveness? Who needs to be forgiven? In this narrative of Rick Ross, I want you to tell me, how do you see forgiveness playing out? I mean, there's an obvious one. There's an obvious one. I just told you a story about a drug dealer who just destroyed his community. How do you see forgiveness playing out in that scenario?
Rick Ross asking forgiveness from others.
Yeah, Rick Ross needs to ask forgiveness from others, right? That's one level to it. That's one aspect or one perspective. Any more?
Asking forgiveness from God.
Ask forgiveness from God, 100%. anymore.
Has to forgive himself.
Forgive himself. Forgive himself. You don't have to say anymore. Forgive himself. Anymore. You don't see any ways in which forgiveness can be exercised in that story. Gave you a lot of pieces.
You might have to forgive his brother for attacking his mom, or his mom.
Forgive his mom for protect. Yeah. Forgive his and you know what? When you have siblings, you may still be mad at your mother, right? In that situation, you may still be mad at he may still be mad at his mother for what she did to him out of self-defense, and knowing that I know why you did what you had to do, but man, could you have shot him in the leg or something? Could you have shot him in the arm? It's real. It's real. I have somebody in my family where infidelity was a part of the marriage, and the kids were upset at one parent for wanting to leave the other, but they knew why she was leaving. I said, well, I kind of gave that one up. You dig what I'm saying? So here it is, the kids know this is why the marriage is breaking up. We know why the marriage is breaking up, but we still mad at you because you want to leave this person. So sometimes even when we know why somebody might lash out, we can still be upset at that person for lashing out. Did anybody think of maybe our government needs to ask for Rick Ross's forgiveness? Anybody think about that? I mean, they allowed this substance to be brought into America, correct? They dropped it in his community, in his backyard. Up until this point, you don't hear about slaves doing coke, right? Anybody heard these stories about Harriet Tubman just getting busy? Nah. So the fact that this substance was allowed to come into our own backyard, and no one knew how toxic it was, or maybe they knew how toxic it was, because it's funny, it could have landed anywhere in the world. It could have landed, and it used to come over by ships. It could have landed anywhere in the world, but it came in the black community. Interesting. There's a lot of ways in which we can exercise forgiveness when we think about Rick Ross's story. Because immediately we want to say, well, Rick Ross should be the one that's being judged and condemned, and he should be asking for forgiveness. But what about everything that led him to feel like the only other option I have is to sell drugs? This is the only other option. Many of you, from what I know, have never had to have that option. Food's in the refrigerator. Parents are available. School you might see a couple fights at school, but nothing crazy where you were afraid for your life at school. Clothes. The fact that you can even go home and study. There's some people that can't go home and study because the environment is so chaotic and so disorganized and so toxic that a kid doesn't even have enough clarity to go home and just study. But everybody was able to go home and study. Or you was able to go to school and function because you didn't have to worry about, man, I'm starving. I ain't eat last night, I ain't eat this morning, but I gotta be in school all day, man, I can't function because I'm just trying to wait for lunch, right? But here's this young man going through this situation, and sometimes that's what gets you to these places that could be somewhat dark. So that's why we ask the question, what inspires legacy, culture, and behavior? We see the behavior, but we gotta ask some questions first before we start to judge what we see in front of us. Everybody with me? So now the next thing that we do is, after we talk about forgiveness, we wanna explore our A game, the A game, right? Now, some of the key features of the A game is these three things right here. We want to explore empathy, acceptance, and forgiveness. Now, we all know what forgiveness is. We're gonna learn a little bit about more acceptance, and then there's empathy. How many of you guys know what empathy is? If you raise your hand, I'm gonna ask you to define it.
Empathy is like when you can't relate to somebody what they're feeling, but like you feel bad for them or like you feel but you can't relate to it. Pretty good. I'm gonna help you out with that one. So I would say that empathy is when we use our imagination. We wanna use our imagination
to hopefully put ourselves in that person's shoes as best as possible. Meaning, like, I can't feel what you're feeling right now, but I want to work really, really hard to feel what you feel, right? So that's what empathy is, right? So we talk about the A game. We want to exercise these three things. So let me explain to you what the A game is. The A game is a way in which we can exercise emotional intelligence. It's also a way that we can start to process kind of the moments that happen in our lives and also the emotions that come along with the moments. So I give you a quick example. I go through something. It's traumatic, it's triggering, right? I feel the emotion of insecurity and anger. Everybody with me? So once I go through this, once I experience this, the first thing I have to do is I have to acknowledge what I've been through. And I have to acknowledge the moments. There's a lot of times when we go through things and we don't acknowledge the moment, nor do we want to acknowledge the emotion, especially with dudes. We don't want to acknowledge that we are insecure in certain moments. We were scared in certain moments. We were fearful in certain moments, right? Listen, dude, if you go up and you got to lay up, right? You got to lay up. Ain't nobody behind you, ain't nobody around you. If you go up and you hear footsteps and then you double clutch for no reason, that's got to be, I'm afraid, I'm insecure, something's happening. Because we've all had those moments where we went up and you went up so strong, you got hit and you didn't even realize, and you finished the and guys are falling all over you and you just land on your feet. In that moment, you felt confident, right? But there's moments when you go and you're like, pat, 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 and then you look, next thing you know, you blowing a bun, right? It happens from time to time. But at that moment, you can't acknowledge the fact that maybe I was intimidated. Maybe I thought little buddy was about to block my shot. Maybe I thought big boy was about to block my shot, right? So we have to acknowledge the moment and we have to acknowledge the emotion that comes with it. Everybody with me? All right, now this is where we really got to rock and roll. We got to get deep into it. The acceptance part. At some point, I have to accept my emotions enough to make friends with them. So I'm working with two emotions. I got insecurity and I got anger. Everybody with me? So what I got to do is I got to make friends with them. Oftentimes what we do is when we feel something and we get triggered, what we do is we have a tendency to detach from ourselves. We want to detach from ourselves when we go through things, because when I can detach from myself, I get an opportunity to now point the finger, blame, shame, and judge. So how does this happen? You do something to me, and now I get the chance to say, Zach, man, look what you made me do. Remind you, I'm detached from myself. I'm having an out-of-body experience. I'm really right there, but I detach, and now I'm pointing the blame. Look what you made me do. Look, you made me look stupid. You made me look dumb. Look at all, everybody's laughing at me, all because of you. Judging, right? Sometimes we do this to ourselves. You do something inadvertently, you make a mistake, right? Now I'm like, well, I'm sorry, the other way. Now I may do this to myself. I do something to you inadvertently, now I'm doing this to myself. Marv, how could you be so stupid? Look what you did to Zach. Look, you just ruined his life. How could you be so irresponsible, so stupid? And a lot of times what we do is we make these judgments and then we define people by these judgments. We define ourselves by these moments and we just judge ourselves too harshly. And it becomes a burden. It becomes a burden that we're unable to shake. And next thing you know, we can't move forward in life. So what we have to do is we have to accept our emotions enough to make friends with them. So instead of me detaching from the moment, I want to stay connected to the moment, right? And again, this is life, this is sports, this is all your relationships. I want to stay connected so I can say, all right, insecurity, where did you come from? Where you come from, insecurity? Imagine security just sits next to you. Like, where did you come from? And that's when insecurity might say, Marv, you know where I came from. Remember when you was 5 years old, right? And you wanted to sing and dance? And so you sang and danced for the family, right? You sang and danced for the family. And everybody clowned you. They laughed at you, they teased you, they mocked you. You dropped your instrument, you ran up the stairs, they were still clowning you. Still clowning you. And everything that you loved, you did it behind closed doors. Everything you was passionate about, you did it behind closed doors because you didn't want to be mocked and teased anymore. And this went on for years. Not only did it go on for years, but it started to fall in other areas of your life. So everything that you loved, everything, you did it behind closed doors. Here you are an extrovert. You are an extrovert by nature. All you want to do is be out in front, sing and dance and bring people together with your energy, with your talent. But you decided to be an introvert and never ever show the world how gifted you were. And you did this not only at 5, but 6, 7, 10, 15. Now here you are 25, wondering why you're so miserable because you've been living life like an introvert when all your life you've been an extrovert who wanted to sing and dance. You dig what I'm saying? Everybody with me? So now when I come to that realization, I can say, I got it now. That's why I had to go through what I went through. See, here Zach was pissing me off, or I made a revelation because I made a mistake, but because of this moment and the emotion that came from it, I was able to make friends with my emotion, and from there I was able to understand that's why I had to go through what I went through. Now the beauty starts to happen. Now I can appreciate what I've been through. Now I learn how to appreciate my tough times, my darkness, right? Being alone. All those moments where you felt insecure, emotional, scared, afraid, you felt stupid, you felt unloved, unlovable. All those times where you didn't feel right, you didn't feel good, he was trying to get your attention and let you know, listen, you gotta build, you gotta get strong in this area. And if you don't get strong in this area, this is gonna continue. Throughout your life, it's gonna continue. See, ain't nobody else gonna do it for you, so you gotta process these emotions properly, right? If it's devastating enough, maybe you might need a counselor. Maybe you might need a session with Dean Rashi. But some of this stuff you gotta process. You think about when you get pissed off and you come out the game and you on the bench, you mad, but why? Why? Are you mad because you came out and maybe you thought you was rocking and rolling? Or are you mad because your shots ain't falling or you ain't getting touches? It is what it is. The reason is whatever the reason is, but you have to ask yourself, why am I so upset? Because if I don't get out of this funk, there's a good chance I'm gonna go back in the game with that same funk, and next thing I know, my whole game's been compromised. Now I turned a decent game where I was rocking and rolling into a poor game. Does that make sense? But the second that we can understand our tough times and why the tough times are necessary, now we can appreciate them and now we can accelerate with what we need and leave behind the stuff that we don't. Does that make sense? So when we start thinking about the black experience, not only do black folks have to do this, not only do we have to acknowledge our past, our history, our current situation, we have to accept them. Not accepting them meaning I'm just gonna let everybody just do whatever they want to me, but understanding as I fight, as I march forward, as I fight for what I want in this world, what can I accept? What moments are happening and what are the moments that are attached to them that I can accept so I can make friends with these emotions and understand where I need to grow. And then once I made that growth, now I can appreciate my struggle. I can appreciate my grind. I can appreciate those moments when times was dark, times was tough. I couldn't see daylight. I can appreciate it. And now I can accelerate with what I need, leaving back the stuff that I don't. Here's what I need you guys to communicate and talk to me. Think of a moment. Think of a moment, and I want you to think about the moment and the emotions that were triggered because of the moment. Now, I would prefer you not to use the time that you won a championship and you was on somebody's shoulders with the trophy and nothing like that, right? That's easy. That's easy money. I want you to tell me about the moments where things wasn't right, things wasn't good, and I want you to talk about this process. Now, here's the thing. If you want to talk and share and give us details, that's cool. I hope you would. I may, in this process, in this time, I may do the same thing, right? But if you just want to tell me, Marv, this was the emotion, I can't tell you what happened, but this was the emotion, right? It's the difference between, hey, I'm sick, and I'm sick because I did X, Y, and Z, and now these are my symptoms. And then it's, well, Marv, I can't tell you what I did to get sick, but these are my symptoms. You guys understand in terms of how I'm trying to give you an opportunity to share, but not need to give me all your information. Does that make sense? So we all got bones in the closet, right? And we don't need to just unlock that thing and let all of them fall out. You know what I'm saying? Some of your bones need to stay in the closet, all right? I got bones in the closet. Dean, Coach, everybody got bones. Everybody in here got something that we ain't trying to let nobody know about, right? So we want to make sure that we communicate, share, but we want to make sure that we do it accordingly. Everybody with me? So give me a moment. Listen, fellas. Listen, I'm begging you now. I'm begging you. Okay? I hope I wanted to make this a safe space. So I wanted to pray for you. I wanted to give you an opportunity, if you didn't believe in God, to kind of lock into whatever spiritual, divine entity that will make you feel confident. We prayed about giving you guys the courage to speak and talk. This is it, man. This is it. You'll never be able to say that no one ever told you how to process your emotions, right? You got the NBA talking a lot about mental health. It's real, man. But if you want to be Joe Cool and too cool for school and be like, nah, man, I don't really feel nothing. I'm like ice cold or something. All right, now, you do that. You keep doing that, and guess what? At some point, you're gonna have a wife. And look, with all due respect, I don't know how everybody get down. Some of you might have a partner. I don't know, right? You got to make sure that we respect everybody. Usually, that's a good joke that kills, but he didn't kill today. All right, cool. So listen. Usually, so you're gonna if you try to be Joe Cool, there's a good chance that you have a wife or you have a spouse or somebody you have, and because you don't understand your emotion, you have any emotional intelligence, it might be a rocky road. And then you say it's okay when I have children, that's when I'll open up. And then your kid want to talk to you, kid want to hug you, kid want to do something, want to be close to you, and if you ain't opened up yet, if you don't know how to open up, if you don't know how to be vulnerable, if you don't know how to show your kid how to love properly, it could go south. So we got to learn this stuff now, right? So again, give me a moment. Give me a moment. Give me a moment that brought some negative emotion out of you. That's all I want to know is just give me the moment and the emotion or tell me, Marv, there was one time when I felt this. Lord have mercy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Father. Go ahead.
When I tore my ACL, I felt sadness and like anger.
100%. I bet you probably felt more anger than anything, right? So anger, right? So if you guys just want to say, Marv, there's this moment, I felt anger. That's it. I want to ask you any more questions. I just want to know what the emotion was. Go ahead.
Disgust and hate.
Disgust and hate. And I really want to ask you the question, but I said I wouldn't, so I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you.
Last year when we started season off real bad and made some minor changes, I just felt like kind of upset at myself, frustrated, and just down.
Frustrated, down. Okay.
So my freshman year of college, I wasn't really playing. I had sat like the first 7, 8 games, and I finally got in to get my opportunity, and I blew it. Like I felt like the smallest man on the world. I felt like I didn't want to play basketball anymore. All that super low.
For sure. Maybe on some low level of depression, on some level. So maybe you feel like can I hoop? Like can I hoop? You know what I'm saying? Yup.
I would say summer 2017 was probably like one of the hardest moments, like hardest times in my life, and I was experiencing like a lot of depression.
A lot of depression. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's it. We don't need to know what happened. We just need to know what you was feeling. Go ahead.
Losing somebody close to you and like feel real sad.
Sure. And you could probably get deeper if you wanted to. Go ahead, Austin.
This summer when I found out I had cancer, I was pretty mad at God. I was just like sad.
Did you feel any fear?
Yeah, fear for sure.
Yeah. And so these are the things that we got to do. I'm telling you, man, it's healthy. You go through something, but once you start feeling whatever you're feeling, see if you can define it. Just see if you can define it, right? It ain't gotta be a long intervention. You ain't gotta be like, man, listen, man, I need about 3 hours, man. Okay, no, you can just real quick, just start thinking about it. Like I'm feeling away, but what is it though? I thought that was funny. What is it though? And then once you figure out what is it, okay, now, why? So that's my next question. of, and look, some of you guys have already answered. Now you can just say, if you have an answer, you can just tell me, Marv, there was a time when I had to accept this emotion. So idealistically, you can say, Marv, I had to, Bernard, you can say, I had to accept the sadness, and I had to explore it. You know what I'm saying? If Austin, you say, well, Marv, I had to accept the fact that I was afraid in order for me to work through it. So are there any moments, and I don't even want the moment anymore, I just want the emotion that you've accepted before. Marv, I accepted this emotion once or twice in my life.
When I broke my foot, I accepted that it takes time.
Okay.
You can't beat yourself up about it.
Okay, so you broke your foot, probably a lot of emotions running, but at some point you just accepted this is what's happened, and you also accepted the emotions that was attached to you breaking your foot, right? You accepted the whole process, the experience. Anybody else? I'll share with you. I went to a Pistons game. I lost $100. Okay, I had on these jeans. It was in my back pocket. I had $140. We go to the Pistons game, and my wife is like, you know what? We're gonna use this $140 to just have a great time, right? We got $140 to spend at Little Caesars, so kids can buy whatever they want. They can eat whatever they want. We'll go to the pro shop. If the kids wanna buy something, we got $140 to spend at the game, right? My wife is she's in the pro shop. And so she said, hey, I think Marv, we're gonna buy Marv this little hoodie or whatever. So I said, cool. I said, you need some money? So I'll pull it out. And she says, no, I'm good, I'll use my card. I was like, okay, because I got some money. She's like, no, I'll use my card. I said, all right, cool. I'll put it back in my pocket. So I thought. Halftime. Kids like, hey, you guys want something to eat? You want to get something to eat? Yes. Hungry, let's go. Got $100, $140, let's get busy. So I'm like, got the seat, I'm like, all right, let me get this $100, okay. All right, I'm like, okay, I feel it right there. You ever start patting and you know you ain't got no pockets? Like, you just like, huh? Yeah, I'm about to, because I think it's in the car, right? I think I left it in the car. I knew I didn't leave it in the car, but I said it. Thought I left it in the car. Long story short, we get home, and it's a somber night because I lost $100, right? We get up in the morning, I'm eating breakfast. I asked my wife, who happened to be staying home that day. I said, Sarah, you mad because I lost $100? Because she wasn't talking to me. I said, you mad because I lost $100? And she says, no, I'm not mad. I'm mad that this week has been kind of crazy, and on top of it, we can't seem to keep track of anything. I said, you mad because I lost $100. That's why you mad. Let me tell you something. Listen up. If you don't hear nothing else I say, do not tell a woman why she's mad. All right? Don't ever do that. Don't ever tell a woman why she's mad. That will piss her the heck off. All right? Here's the thing. Shorten the story up a little even more. She said, Marv, your ego is so huge, you think that everything goes back to you. You think I'm mad at you. I'm not mad. I had a terrible week. I'm not mad that you lost $100. I wish you would put things in more secure places, but I'm not mad at you. I'm just upset that we just can't seem to get things, organize ourselves. Do you think I calmed down after that? No. Sarah, you weak. Let me tell you something. I know why you're mad. And it took me a while to understand. I had to accept my ego out of control sometimes. Now, here's the part that I had to make friends with. As I learned about my ego, I had to realize, Mark, why is your ego out of control? I'm an only child. I don't have to consider anybody else. I lived at home for 18 years, never had to consider anybody else. All I have to do is think about myself. Everything always comes back to me because that's all it's ever been. And even though I have a wife, I have 3 children, and I do care about other people greatly, sometimes it still comes back to me. And I had to accept that. And I had to understand why I felt that way. So the beauty of it then, as I appreciated the moment, I said, man, I appreciate that moment because not only have I appreciate the moment so much that I've told that story several times since it's happened. And now I'm given an opportunity to now talk about my downfall, to talk about my ego, my problem with the world revolving around me. I've been able to talk about that to other people. And hopefully make you laugh, but hopefully make you think. When I feel some kind of way, why? And then once I appreciate, now I can accelerate. I can accelerate with what I need and leave back the stuff that I don't. So real quickly, before we get done, before I go to this last thing over here, walking with wagons and gems, can you guys tell me about a time when you went through something and you was able to look back at it and say, man, I appreciate that moment. I've appreciated that moment a great deal because, man, had that not happened in my life, I might not be as strong as I am today. Anybody? Go ahead.
Got cut from the 6th grade basketball team.
Yeah, the Michael Jordan story. What they don't tell you though is Michael Jordan averaged 27 on JV though. Like they try to make you seem like he got cut from varsity and he was a bum. No, he got busy. He almost averaged like 30 points on JV. But that helped you out, motivated you, right? You had your hand up?
Well, with the example that I gave, it just made me like want to work harder, just like prove to myself and a lot of people that I'm going to do what I should.
That's it. Simple as that. So that moment right there may have been the catalyst for an incredible senior year. An incredible senior year. And people wonder, like, man, why are you so motivated, man? Where's this play coming from? We didn't know. Well, it was this one time or this one area of my life that didn't go right. And because of that, it took me to a different place, right? Anybody else? You had a moment in your life that just didn't go right, but it's because of that moment, you're better off because of it. And then you, Cody.
Last year I had a threat of cancer. It turned out to be negative, but during that window of time while they were testing, I changed what I ate, what I drank, how I exercise, how I sleep. It motivated me to make some changes in my life.
You said it was a scare?
It was a scare.
Wow, it's a scare. Made you change your life. That's real talk. How about you?
Just say freshman year of college. Just obviously all the changes that you go through and just became a better person.
100%. So that's how we accelerate properly. No one ever should tell you, when you're going through things, no one ever should tell you just to move on, right? No one should ever tell you to move on. They should hopefully they can empathize with you. Hopefully you can accept what you've been through, and hopefully you can exercise forgiveness in the way that you need to exercise it. You know, when things like you talk about, this person in your life that you lost, your mother having cancer, no longer has cancer, correct?
No, she has cancer.
So still has cancer, so you're still going through this?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So these are these moments in which we have to exercise forgiveness. We have to exercise forgiveness, and somebody would tell you, people who believe in God, they would say you need to ask for forgiveness. You shouldn't be upset at God, right? Somebody might say that to you. You're like, whoa. You don't know what I'm going through, right? You don't know what I'm going through. I'm going through something tough. I'm going through something real. And that's when somebody might see you one day, they might see you down, or maybe you're a little chippy, or maybe you don't have the best attitude. And that's what we got to say, wait a minute. Before we just come down on this brother, I wonder what he's going through. You dig what I'm saying? It's all these moments in life where we just see somebody and we don't like the way they show up and we just want to condemn them. But we don't ever ask what is that person going through? So we take it from a macro perspective, and we bring it out to a micro perspective. Even when we see the black experience and we see Jay-Z and Beyonce, it's easy to celebrate them, but some of these people that might be looking like they're on their last leg, and we want to instantly just judge and condemn, make jokes. It's like, whoa. What inspires the behavior? I wonder what they're going through. You see somebody on TV that did something crazy, black, white, yellow, blue, we just instantly say, that person is crazy. But we can even go back to Rick Ross and ask the question, what inspired the behavior though? Ain't no well, listen, I mean, I got a son named Simon, 3 years old. This dude ain't pull a gun out on me yet. He ain't went to the kitchen and got a knife, been standing over me breathing at night. He ain't did none of that. Now, all I gotta do is mess him up. All I gotta do is mess him up. All I gotta do is beat my wife. All I gotta do is beat my kids. All I gotta do is threaten my family with a knife. All I gotta do is do the same thing to him over and over and over and over again, right? I can destroy my family, make sure everybody's living in fear, and at some point, guess what? Simon might become me. You guys understand that? And then somebody gonna look at Simon and say, man, you crazy. But somebody else, even though in all his faults and all his frailties, gotta say, but man, that brother, he didn't wake up like that. He wasn't born like that. Is Simon rambunctious and wild? Yes. But he ain't trying to hurt nobody. So we all are inspired by something. The black experience is inspired by something. Even when we think about the stuff that's taking place in our society and in the actions that go against black people, that work against, but it's inspired by something. Everything is inspired by something. And that's when we have to work very hard to be more curious than we are judgmental. Everybody understand where I'm coming from? So this is not just a black thing, it's also a very inclusive thing. And as we experience things, as we come in contact with different people and we get triggered by certain company, it's really important that we start asking the question, why am I triggered by you? And if you do something to me that's kind of, offbeat, what inspires your behavior? I wonder why you show up the way that you show up. Is there some way I can help you? Because when we talk about Christians, that's how we should show up. Love thy neighbor, right? Anybody ever heard of the verse that says, judge and condemn thy neighbor? Anybody ever heard that one? Yeah, just love thy neighbor. Love them. Be curious. I wonder what they're going through. And here's the thing. You can't always know what they're going through. You can't always know what they're going through. So at sometimes you just got to be patient. Now look, if somebody if black walking around people and just hitting people in the stomach, like, listen, man, we're going to have to, you got to pay for that. Something's got to happen, right? But on some level, you got to be like, listen, man, does anybody know what Bernard's going through? Why is he walking around hitting people in the stomach? Right? We got to ask that question so that we can at some point have an opportunity to possibly help that person. So here we are, the last part. We went from what inspires legacy coaching behavior. We talked about Rick Ross. We talked about the situation in which he hurt some people, but his government hurt him, right? Put him at a deficit. And so he did what he had to do to survive. But in doing that, he hurt a lot of people. So we talk about how forgiveness plays a big role in the lives of people who have done bad things, right? And that people have done, and the people who have done bad things to that person, forgiveness plays a huge role in our Christian walk. And then we talked about the A game. So now as we start to come in contact with these moments that affect us and that trigger us, how do we now start to process our emotions so that we can have a higher, more awareness, more emotional intelligence, and show up better, right? And then we have this concept called walking with wagons and gems, right? It's the last thing, and as you can see, it says closed and thank you. So I'll leave you with this. Throughout your life, you don't know, but you're pulling a wagon, right? So no matter what you're doing on the basketball court, on your way to class, on your way to high school, on your way to college, on your little dates, whatever the case may be, you're pulling a wagon, okay? Every time you experience a moment of clunk of junk goes into that wagon. Now, what many of us do is we walk forever, never ever acknowledging what's in this wagon. And over the course of time, because you guys, none of you are in your prime, right? None of you are in your prime, right? You don't reach your prime, your physical prime, until about 26, 27, which sucks because you're in high school, you're in college, you're like, man, can I just hit that now, right? But it takes a while. So here you are, you're gonna reach your prime, you're gonna sustain it into your 30s, and then after that, you wanna try to sustain it as long as you can, and then there's a decline. You guys will be lucky if you can be like Dean Rachi, right? Lucky. But what happens is you're pulling this wagon, and over the course of time, you pull it gracefully, and at some point you get older, and all of a sudden this wagon becomes tougher and tougher to pull. Next thing you know, you're pulling it with all your might, and here's life. Life is going, time is going, you're accelerating through life, but you're pulling this wagon because you got all these moments and all these clunks of junk in your wagon, and what you failed to do this whole time, you didn't acknowledge them. You never took the time just to acknowledge them. So think about it. Manny, how old are you? You're 22 years old. You might have 21 years of clunks of junk in this wagon that you never took the time to just take for a minute and just take the chisel and just hammer and say, ding, 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 bah. I got this gem. And you look at the gem and you just know it. Just the knowledge. Just the knowledge I've been looking for. You say, oh, let me do this again, man. You know, I know time moving, but let me just take some time to pause for a little bit. While time moving, let me just take some time to pause. Let me get another clunk of junk. You put it down there, it shake the table. You take your chisel and your hammer, cling, cling, bah. You're like, oh my gosh, this is the love. I was looking for this. I got knowledge, love, right? And you just keep doing this throughout the course of time. And you're just trying to catch up. I got 21 years of the stuff I ain't unpacked yet, right? I'm trying to acknowledge this stuff and acknowledge it so I can appreciate it, so I can accelerate, right? So you're taking all these clunks of junk and you want to keep on hammering so you can say, oh man, I got these gems. And these gems represent knowledge, love, wisdom, understanding. Now think about it. If you got these clunks of junk, right? You got this gem, it's this big, but the clunk of junk is about the size of a basketball. It's ugly, it's heavy, right? And you moving in this wagon, who's going to be moving the most efficient? The person with a wagon full of knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and love? Or the person with a bunch of junk in his wagon? Who's moving the most efficiently throughout life? Yeah. There's some 30-year-old who moves like a 60-year-old. I see people all the time, man. Sarah and I will go to different places, and somebody be looking, oh, like, just looking bad. He'd be like, man, yeah, man, so how old are you? They're like, oh, man, I'm 33. I'm like, damn. You 33? Shoot, what's going on, bro? But then you find some people that's 60, they look like they move like they're 30. I mean, graceful, efficient. And you just know it. You ain't even got to ask them the question. You're like, man, what you doing? Well, you ain't got to ask them the question, but if you ask them, you're like, what are you doing? They're like, I'm living right. I'm taking some time, and I'm taking some time, and I'm taking these moments that I have, and I'm chiseling them down. I'm finding that love, that knowledge, that wisdom, understanding in every single moment. That's why when you come around me, it feel good. That's why when you see me, it feel good. You're like, I want to be around this dude because the energy, the love, the knowledge, the wisdom, understanding is radiating. I want to be around that. And that's what we all want to be, right? As Christians, we want to be people that when we step in the scene, people they feel better. And so when it comes to race, whether we're talking about race relations, when it talks about multiculturalism, right? We want to walk with a wagon full of gems, right? And we want to take all this stuff. We want to ask these questions. What inspires behavior? We want to be curious about people. We want to exercise forgiveness. We want to talk about acceptance and empathy and really make sure that when people get around us, they feel like, you know what, the reason why I love being around this person, man, they don't judge me, man. They just meet me wherever I am, and they show me love, right? And I guarantee you, if we're doing this cross-culturally, right? And we're doing this on this basketball team, if y'all doing this, bro, I'm telling you, this good for at least 5 wins. I'm talking about when y'all stinking up the joint. If y'all can continue to stay together and do this stuff, man, that's good for at least 5. Y'all won't squeak out 5 because y'all together. Make sense? Hey, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for, especially when we started to ask you to talk. I'm super grateful when anybody decides to talk back to me and share. It's a big deal, man. It's a big deal, right? And you guys did that for me, right? You made yourself vulnerable, and we had some laughs, and hopefully you walked away from this space feeling like you got a little bit better, maybe you got a little taller, right? But thank you, Coach Sean, Eddie, once again, Dean Rachi. just thank everybody that was a part of this moment, and this is it. So with this sheet, everything that I talked about is on this sheet, right? Now listen, don't throw it away in my face. I'll punch you in the stomach, right? But maybe you keep this and you just fold it up, because maybe it's down the line, you might be able to use it, whether it's for an assignment of some sort or something like that, but you might find this useful. So don't disrespect me in my face, just disrespect me behind my back. All right? But thank you so much. I'll see you guys soon.